Oh, hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Killing It Country. If this is your first time here, my name is James, and today's video is a video that will probably end up being pretty special for me. It's going to be based on, as you know, my raised garden bed project. It was a pretty awesome project that we took on last year, kind of at the start of the pandemic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk, I'm going to talk, I'm going to supplement this video with some still photography, some video clips that I had from my phone from last summer, and probably also going to get the drone up in the air and try to do something neat in that regard. I've got some photos with me out here that I can refer to try and keep this on track a little bit to make it as efficient of a video for you as I possibly can. So it's going to be a great video. It's going to be a ton of fun. Stick around. Let's do it. I started this project by reverse engineering a whole bunch of pictures and examples of raised garden beds that I found off of the internet and off of YouTube. I built a prototype of my first garden bed out of basically scraps that I had on the property. I mean, I knew I wanted the raised bed project to be pressure treated, but I just used whatever junk I could find just to get an idea of the dimensions of how big this thing was going to be and how to most efficiently and effectively build it. I built an Excel spreadsheet on the computer and made a list of all of the different sizes of wood that I would need with costing and how, if I made changes, how that would affect the bottom line. I wanted to find out exactly what this thing was going to cost. I got some quotes from that point. Once you know how many pieces of wood you're going to need, it's pretty easy to input the cost per unit into the Excel spreadsheet and watch the price change. At that point, I could get all of the lumber delivered, and it was delivered, and they dropped it right in the middle of my driveway with the 2x4s on the bottom, which is what I needed first. So, job one, restack everything neatly and in an organized manner off to the side of the driveway so that nothing would be in the way of the coming and going of vehicles, and so that the lumber wouldn't get warped and wrecked. At that point, we started building. I recommend, if you don't have this and you do a lot of jobs outside, go ahead and get yourself one of these tents. It's going to save you big time from the sun. If I didn't have this tent, it would have been a lot harder to build. Anybody that lives in Ontario, if you remember what it was like right at the start of the global pandemic, the temperature changed from cold to hot very rapidly. You know, I could almost store my my snow shovels and my sunscreen in the same spot because they'll never be put away at the same time. So, what can I show you in this picture? You can see that I've got my big project table set up there. That thing is really great for this kind of stuff because you can stack a whole bunch of weight on there and it's not going to move. I've got my chop saw set up in the background there, and you can see that tiny little piece of 2x4 that's screwed down on that piece of 4x4. So that's all screwed down to that table, and I basically set that up as an end stop because what I did with this project is, if I had a piece of wood that had to be cut multiple times because I needed multiple pieces, I set myself up like an assembly line. You see all that wood piled up in the background on the floor? That's lumber for the whole garden, not just one bed. So I made all of the common cuts sequentially just to save time. It did kind of make it feel like I was just cutting wood for days and days and days and not really accomplishing anything. But when it came time to actually start picking up the impact driver and putting this thing together, that's when that work really pays off because the assembly goes really fast. Not much else to talk about in that photo. This thing was built by Dad and I. It was a great project to tackle together. Lots of good quality time spent together. The next photo, that is actually the first bed completed with no legs, with no bottom. So what can I tell you about that? This is where it really pays off to plan this thing as best as you can. So you can see from any of the photos you've seen so far, or from the thumbnail, that the outside of these raised garden beds is 5/4 deck boards. That represents the largest dimension on the front of the bed. So I based the garden beds off of that dimension so that I wouldn't have to make any cuts on those pieces. Everything else in the bed is kind of cut smaller to fit in there around that one dimension. There was only a few pieces of the 5/4 deck board that I actually had to cut maybe a saw blade off just to get it to work. You can see that I have included some hanger brackets in there just for extra strength. When the dirt goes in, when the dirt gets wet, this thing gets really heavy. So I wanted to include as much structural support as I could in the design phase instead of having to go back later and take care of any potential failures. Yeah, so no legs were installed on this for now. The legs are actually installed in the assembly of the garden bed themselves, which you'll see a little later. You can see here in the next video, which I'll show you right now. Without that tractor, this would have been really hard. I've got a Kubota BX. I'll link here to my review on that machine. If you have a good chunk of property and you can even think of a handful of jobs that a machine like that might help you with, you should go and get yourself one of those machines if you think you can swing it in terms of affordability. You won't regret it. I put a set of HLA forks on the front of that thing. It's amazing. So, back on the assembly line building these boxes. Before you know it, you'll be stacking up your 3rd box, you'll be stacking up your 7th box, you'll be stacking up your 11th box, and then you'll have 14 waiting to go. And then the fun begins. So here's a photo of the first few boxes that we put into place, and it's the first time that you're going to see how I place these things. My sister and my wife at this point became a lot more interested in the project if they weren't already, and they graciously decided to lend a hand. And my wife honestly put down most of those stones by herself. I rolled down some geotextile material. I think that's a 5-foot roll, and we used the John Deere with the 10P polycart and moved a lot of the stone that way. Used the bucket on the Kubota to move some more of the stone. What else can I tell you about that photo? You can see that my tent for the shade has made its way down there, followed me wherever I went that summer. I lost a lot of weight last summer. One of the only people I know that actually lost weight in a global pandemic. From start to the finish of the year, I dropped 50 pounds, which is pretty awesome. I feel a lot better now. Okay, that's 3/4 inch crushed stone on top of that geotextile material, and it's pretty good. It made leveling those cement blocks which support the legs pretty easy, because you could just kind of shake the stones around with your hand and to get the level you wanted or the elevation that you wanted. In this next picture you can see what I did for attaching the beds together and what I did for the corners. So basically, to attach the beds together, I used a 2x6 on the outside with a 2x4 separating the beds, and I made like a custom T-bar for connecting the beds together. And then on the outside corners, it was basically just an L bracket. Same thing, a 2x4 and a 2x6. You can also see in this picture that I used, that's Barnmaster roofing tin, 8-foot sheets by what I believe is 32 inches. And they basically lay right on the inside, except for the fact that you need to get some tin snips, and you do have to cut out for some of these supports on the inside, which is not too bad. Okay, here's the first picture you're seeing probably of the number of beds that I used. I went with a 14 bed design. The design that I saw on the internet and on YouTube was a 12 bed design, and I really just wanted some more space on the inside. And I'm not gonna lie, there was a part of me that just wanted to make it a little bit bigger so that I could say it was a little bit bigger. I've got 6 beds along the back, 2 beds on each side, and 4 beds across the front, evenly spaced with a door in the middle. In this picture, you can also see the batter boards that I used when I was doing the layout with my strings. In this picture, you can definitely see how uneven the terrain was where I installed this raised garden bed. It ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise, which I will talk about at the end of the video, but in order to get everything perfectly level, I purchased myself a Topcon RL H5A self-leveling rotary laser, which is awesome. I've found so many other things to do with this laser on the property now that I own it. Also, another great thing to invest in if you plan on doing any of your own landscaping or hardscaping, that kind of stuff. So I leveled this thing pretty accurately. The whole thing is within like a 1/16 of an inch, I think, or definitely within an 1/8 of an inch. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the accuracy of that laser level. Let's see here. So here's a good overview of the construction at that point. In this picture, the bed that's closest to you guys on the screen, that's the lowest bed. And the back corner, that is the bed that's the highest. Where I built the bed actually is right on top of the geothermal heating and cooling loop field for the house. I don't know if that was a good idea to do that or not, but it seemed like a nice place to put the garden, a good distance away from the house. Can't really do anything else with the space except plant grass and mow it, so that's where we put it. Here's a few pictures of some wildlife that visited us at the garden halfway through the summer. Some nice sized turkeys on this property. Never seen a turkey quite that nice. It's pretty perfect except for that missing tail feather. Okay, so in this picture you can see I was doing a bit of experimenting with some capping on the garden beds. I actually did not do any other capping except for that, and I think I might just remove it. It's a little bit unnecessary, and I wasn't really thrilled with how it turned out, so the rest of the beds are just plain with no capping. I did line the sides of the bed, the garden beds, with a 7mm marine shrink wrap. I have a ton of stuff around here that gets shrink wrapped, and I'm always reusing the scraps over and over and over again. And I had some offcuts laying around that worked out just perfect for this job. It should help to make the raised beds last a little longer, keeping the moisture away from the pressure treated sides of the bed. In order to hold the shrink wrap in place, I used 2x2 strapping, and I kind of sandwiched the plastic between the 2x2 strapping and the inside of the garden bed. You should be able to see that from that photo as well. This next photo is actually a photo of the leg detail. So if I can walk you through that, if you just ignore the leg for the time being and just look at the top of the photo where the 2 garden beds are, you can see that it's separated only by the smallest dimension of a 2x4. So that 2x4 vertically going up and down there, that's actually a part of the T-bar. That's the 2x4 section of the T-bar that I used to join these together. So what I did was I would jack one bed up with my floor jack until I got the beep on my laser level telling me that that's essentially the height that I want my bed at. At that point, I could put my leg in on to the stone block, set my height, and put in a couple screws loosely. And then at that point, I would make a custom cut off of a 2x4 for those 2 little side pieces. So every bed has custom height sections of 2x4, those 2 little 2x4s screwed to the side of the T-bar that actually pick up the load of each of the garden beds. Every one of them is a custom height all the way around. The piece of 2x4 that goes horizontally was kind of an afterthought for me. I was a little worried that those cement blocks would shift. I didn't want that, so I wanted each cement block to be in contact with more lumber in order to guarantee that it wouldn't move around. It does add a little bit of structural support, I guess, to the whole mechanism, but for the most part, it just keeps that block from tipping or moving around. Okay, so at that point, we ordered ourselves some good triple mix. Triple mix, now what's that? It was like topsoil. Geez, I can't even remember what's in a triple mix, but I'll throw it up on the screen. That always seems to work well for my videos. We could start planting at that point. It was a late plant. We were late getting our stuff in for sure because the project of this magnitude took a lot longer than I was expecting. So our yield wasn't quite as good as we had originally anticipated, and we're really hoping to do a lot better this year. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, this would be a great time to do that. This next picture shows what I did for drainage. I basically just drilled a bunch of holes in the bottom of that Barnmaster roofing tin. As the water, works its way down through the soil, it's going to land on that galvanized material, find its way to the holes, and drain out onto that 3/4 inch crushed stone. I haven't had any problems. They seem to hold water fairly well, unless you have extended periods of no rain. And then they dry out and you got to get out there with the garden hose. But I haven't had any problems with the beds being oversaturated as a result of a lack of drainage. Let's put it that way. Okay, one thing we learned from last year, if you have a plant or something that you're going to put in that garden bed and you expect it to be a tall growing plant, I would not suggest you plant it in one of the raised beds that is tall, because you will not be able to reach any of the fruit, whatever it's going to bear, fruits, vegetables. You'll have a hard time getting them. I was on a ladder a lot, let's put it that way, picking fruits and green beans and stuff off of the tops of these plants. So if you're going to be climbing green beans, you should put them in the low beds. If you're going to plant carrots, they maybe would go good in the high beds. Here's a picture of the house through the garden, just showing how close it is to the house. It works out well. You get a couple garden hoses, connect them together, and stretch it down there for watering. Here's another good picture of the fence. So in order to do the fence, I bought the fence. First of all, I had a tough time sourcing some of that fence material. I think it's a 2x4 spacing between the metal on the fence. It worked out pretty good. I wanted something that the plants would be able to climb. I wanted something that could potentially aid in keeping the deer out if I have that problem, which I don't think I will, especially because it doesn't have a door at the moment. But I also didn't want something that was so thick that it would be hard to see through. I didn't want chicken wire or anything like that. So this worked out well. And from the one dimension of the fence, I was able to plan how tall the walls would be. And I built myself a custom cherry picker, which you'll see in this photo. And I could use the tractor to go up with a skill saw. And again, using the rotary laser level, I could make sure that they were all cut off at the same height. And then I could cap it. And I did a nice little bit of detail over top of the door to this garden bed. And we had a couple of decoy owls that I was able to screw to the top of there, and I think it looks kind of neat. Okay, here's a picture of my dad planting the garden with one of my kids, and this is where I wanted to talk about how the garden beds are at different heights. And at first I thought it would be a little bit goofy, but honestly, it ended up being a great feature in my opinion, because it is now basically a multi-generational raised garden bed. There is a bed for everybody in my family. My 6-year-old can go to the low beds and she can plant. I can go in the far corner as a 6-foot person and I can plant. My mom and my dad can plant there. There's a bed for everybody. You can be comfortable and be gardening. People that love to garden, sometimes the reason they stop is because they don't want to be down on their hands and knees in the dirt anymore. And with this garden bed, you don't have to be. I think that's pretty cool. So, why did I do this? Well, my sister and I had been talking on and off about putting together a good-sized garden. Why not? She has all of my grandmother's canning stuff, all her stuff to do food preserves, and it's just something that we've always wanted to expand upon and continue doing. And when the pandemic started, and 90% of society were stripping the shelves of toilet paper, we kind of had a different idea and decided that maybe we should be stripping the shelves of the hardware store of all of their pressure-treated lumber. And now that I find myself in the spring of 2021, that kind of seemed like it was a good idea, because we all know what happened with the price of lumber about 3 or 4 months ago. I also I wanted to maybe plant a little bit more than fruits and vegetables. I was kind of looking for a way to plant the seed of sustainability and hard work in my kids. And they're out there with me planting this thing all the time. They're down there with me, multiple times a day, picking off the fruits and picking off the vegetables and planning what we can eat for supper and what we can give to our sister, give to my sister, give to their aunt to be able to preserve for winter. And they can see that it was hard work to build that garden. And they can see that after it's planted, it's pretty neat to be able to walk down there and grab dinner. So what are you trying to do? What are you trying to plant? I guess is what I'm saying. It's a lot more than just a garden, I guess. I can look down there and I can be proud that I built that thing with my wife and with my dad and my sister. And for years and years and years, we'll be able to reap the benefits of that hard work. So that's why I did it. I will say that this garden is based on April Wilkerson's garden. If you have never heard of April Wilkerson on YouTube, you got to check her out. She's got a great channel. She's got a garden bed that's just like this, but a little bit smaller. I just studied her YouTube video very closely, made notes, and made improvements where I see fit, and did what I had to do in order to adapt that design to work for me. And you can probably do the same thing, maybe not to that scale, maybe even bigger. That would be cool. What else? What else can I tell you? If you like this video and you like gardening, then if you stick around on this channel this summer, you'll hopefully see a ton of gardening content. We might do a video on planning what we're going to plant. We'll definitely do a video when we plant. I'm hoping to install some irrigation into the garden this summer, because one thing I noticed last year is that this is not just a garden you go down and water in 2 minutes before bed. It's a time investment. So if I had an automated system, that would be amazing. Maybe gonna do something with garden beds in the middle. I've got that big open space in the middle. I'm thinking maybe low beds for berries or something, but I haven't totally made up my mind. Maybe some lights down there. What else? Maybe a high definition video camera, just to see what's coming and going in terms of animals, because we'll probably end up having something eating under those garden beds at some point. And price. You guys probably want to know how much that costs. I can tell you that it was every bit of $6,000 Canadian in 2020 prices. If somebody came to me and wanted me to build that bed for them, I can tell you, I don't know if I'd do it for $20,000. It was a lot of work. A lot of work. Probably the better part of 2 months spent building that thing. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed that video. I hope you decide to subscribe and stick around and see what's next in terms of gardening and whatever else I have going on this property. There's always something going on. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Like, share, and subscribe. Stick around. There'll be a ton of garden content this summer. You can follow me on Instagram at killingitcountry. And other than that, thank you very much for the privilege of your time, and we'll see you in the next one.